Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this virtual information session. We are thrilled to have you join us and our team to learn more about the Constellation Fund. My name is Amal Kareem, and I'm an impact officer with the Constellation Fund, where I lead our education grant making. I'm joined by my colleagues Rose Carr, Andrew Dayton, Kate Generu, and Cooper Hanning, who will introduce themselves now.
So my name is Rose Carr. I'm the managing impact officer and I lead our housing portfolio.
Hi, Andrew Dayton, founder and CEO of the Constellation Fund. Thanks for joining us.
Hi, I'm Kate Jenner. I'm the Director of Partnerships.
Hello, I'm Cooper Hanning. I'm an impact officer leading our health portfolio.
Today, we hope to give you a sense of Constellation's approach to outcome-driven grant making, talk about our funding priority areas, and outline the process of how to apply for grants. We will give you information of how to contact us at the end of the session. I'm going to hand it over to Andrew now to talk a little bit about what is Constellation and why do we do our things the way that we do.
Thanks, Amal. Well, thank you all for joining. I'm going to start a little bit, as Amal alluded to, with the why. And as you can see here, the why is some of the challenges that we're facing as a community. This is the most generous state in the country, been named that in 2018, actually also in 2019. And it's something that we're all proud of. I think it resonates with who we are as a community. Yet, despite this generosity, we haven't seen the results that we want and that we need. And to the contrary, we've actually seen poverty moving in the wrong direction. For example, in the last 20 years, there's been a 60% rise in people living in poverty in the Twin Cities, to the point now where 1 in 5 residents of our community are living in poverty. And to us, this is a reason to reevaluate the ways in which we are approaching this challenge. And we approach that work through a number of key priorities. The goal to scale impact and to find the organizations and the interventions that are creating the biggest demonstrable impact in our community's fight against poverty. A couple unique parts of our work. First and foremost, because of the generosity of our board of directors and leadership funders, every dollar that is invested in Constellation goes to the community. We cover all of our own costs, which means that our donors can give to Constellation knowing that those dollars will be invested into the organizations in our community, creating deep impact in the fight against poverty. We have one goal and one goal alone, which is to raise the living standards for people living in poverty in the 7-county metropolitan area. We prioritize grants of unrestricted funding, which is a rare form of capital in philanthropy that we believe allows organizations to scale their organizations and their impact holistically. And we've intentionally foregone carrying an endowment because we believe that these resources need to be invested with a sense of urgency, matching the challenges that our community is facing. We don't just write checks, though. We also provide our grantees with access to a truly amazing and unparalleled capacity building program that we call our Beyond Dollars program, which connects top nonprofits with employees, talented individuals from some of our state's leading companies to help them scale their impact with expertise that they need. We're focused on sharing our work, the metrics that we're building, the tools that we're using, our assets that we are open to and excited about sharing with other funders, public policymakers, as a way to build our collective understanding on this topic. And we're also looking to build engagement, to build a community of folks, donors, nonprofit leaders, community members who are interested in using modern information tools alongside community insights to make the best possible decisions. And I'm going to give a quick high-level overview of how we do this work before turning it over to the real experts on the Constellation team to dive into the details. But our goal here is to use the best available information to make the best possible decisions and investments in the fight against poverty. And ideally, the information that we would be using is 30-year longitudinal outcome data from any given nonprofit to understand the impact that those organizations are creating. But as you all know, that information is very difficult to come by for a variety of cost, logistical, and privacy reasons. But Constellation is still focused on using the best that is available, and there's so much of that information. And as you can see here, there's 3 main categories that we rely on to build our metrics. The first is peer-reviewed research, using the knowledge, the insights, the expertise of local scholars, national scholars who are dedicating their lives to understanding these challenges, running randomized control trials, and building those learnings from the research into our evaluation to understand what we can expect to be the long-term poverty fighting impacts of any given program that we evaluate. We're also leveraging local demographic information from the census, from state, county levels to build what we would call a counterfactual, which is an understanding for what do we think would have happened in the lives of these individuals without the support that this program is providing. This gives us a benchmark against which to compare the outcome measurements that we're able to conduct. And lastly, we use information that most funders are using and that most nonprofits do have available, which is who are the people that they're serving, how many of those individuals are being benefited by the program, and how much does it cost. And with all that, we build a benefit cost analysis using key partnerships from some of the brightest minds in our community to understand, based on evidence, if we give a grant to a given organization, what can we expect to be the long-term poverty fighting impact for every dollar that we spend. We then match that quantitative evaluation with qualitative analysis as a chance for us to understand and listen to community insights, to understand the leadership of these organizations. We're not interested in blindly following the metrics, but we are interested in using that information along community qualitative insights to make the best possible decisions. And before I turn it over to the rest of our team here, I'll play a quick video that will give you a high-level view of how this works in practice, and then we'll dive into some more details.
With poverty rates on the rise in the Twin Cities, our good intentions need to yield great results. But how can donors be confident that their dollars will be as impactful as possible? That's where we come in. The Constellation Fund uses the best available information to make the best possible investments in the fight against poverty. To do this, we match careful qualitative evaluations with quantitative metrics to measure the expected long-term quality of life benefits of any poverty intervention. Then we invest every donated dollar accordingly. For example, let's say Constellation is considering a $200,000 investment in a nonprofit that seeks to help students who have dropped out of high school re-enroll to earn their diplomas. Research shows that high school graduates in the Twin Cities earn, on average, $11,000 more annually than students who do not graduate from high school. That adds up to about $200,000 more earned throughout a career. Evidence also shows high school graduates live longer, healthier lives. Nearly 2 years longer, in fact. We assign a health value of $50,000 per year to our analysis, which equals $100,000 of long-term quality of life improvements. So, over a lifetime, the value of graduating high school is worth $300,000 per graduate. To take into account the students who would graduate without our support, we remove them from this equation. If our $200,000 grant will result in 6 students earning their diplomas, this raises the collective living standards in the Twin Cities by 1.8 million. This equates to a poverty-fighting impact of $9 for every $1 invested by Constellation. But we don't stop there, because poverty is complex and its challenges don't exist in silos. Performance in a classroom is impacted by the housing, employment, and health status of students and their families. Constellation connects these dots, applying the same rigorous benefit cost analysis to each potential grantee. We do this to identify intersections and because it allows us to compare the impacts of many differing poverty-fighting approaches. By balancing this analysis alongside careful qualitative evaluations, like the capacity of an organization and its leadership, plus the needs of our communities, the Constellation Fund makes sure precious philanthropic resources are invested in the interventions shown to be the most impactful in the fight against poverty.
All right, thanks, Andrew. And we hope that provides all of you with a high level of understanding of how we approach our work and how we make our grant decisions. I just want to point out a few other key things to note. As Andrew mentioned, Constellation does not have an endowment. So as a result, all of our grants are 1 year in length, but we consider every grantee for renewal each year. We also understand the critical need for general operating funding and encourage unrestricted funding applications. And we do suggest reaching out to an impact officer to discuss your application and grant type prior to submitting an application. Another thing to note that makes us unique is our benefit cost analysis. And this analysis drives towards a simple ratio, benefit relative to cost. So this BCR is a measure of the benefits put into dollar terms accrued by participants who live below the poverty line relative to the cost with that organization or program. This analysis requires the estimation of poverty fighting impact accrued by private individuals. These benefits are usually expressed as increased income, earnings, or the monetary value of improved health. We understand the data piece of our work definitely can sound intimidating, but please note that we try to do the heavy lifting and you do not need to calculate any of your own equations. Our staff will request data such as the number of participants, length of employment, etc. And then we use that data in order to calculate the poverty fighting benefits of the work to the participants. And thus far, we found that organizations have had the information we need pretty readily available. And one other key thing to note is that all assessed organizations will receive a copy of the benefit cost analysis report, and that is regardless of the funding decision. A few other things to note of what our metrics are and what they are not. Our metrics are what we use for a standard for comparing opportunities, allowing for the weighting of similar or dissimilar programs. We use them as a tool for achieving transparency. Our metrics are now online and we welcome outside voices to examine and criticize and improve the metrics. So you can find those on our website. A few things that our metrics are not. They're not the only criteria we use to make grant decisions. We also do a more traditional, thorough qualitative analysis. We also do not look at these metrics as a report card for potential grantees, knowing that a nonprofit can most definitely meet its own mission without scoring high on Constellation's metrics. They also are not a perfect science. Neither the data or the calculations are perfect, but we are always working on finding additional resources, research, and refinement because our metrics are really designed to evolve. They're also not the only approach to smart philanthropy. This is the approach we're taking, but others also employ different and useful standards. And now Amal is going to go through an example equation that is based on a fictional organization called Kids Count.
Thanks, Rose. So you've heard Rose and Andrew mention our BCR and the word metrics a number of times. So our metric is basically the equation that we use to calculate what are those long-term benefits that we estimate are coming from a program. So here's an example of one of our metrics. And this metric is about for a program that's, for example, trying to help students graduate from high school who might have been at risk of dropping out. And so The metric here is looking at what do we think are the long-term lifetime in earnings that have come from that type of program. The basic equation for the metric is on the top box. You see the number of participants is how we start. We would remove or subtract the number of participants who didn't actually finish the program. So we're looking kind of at program effectiveness there. And then we're also going to remove students who we think might have graduated even without the program. And that's the counterfactual rate of graduation. What do we think or estimate would have happened to students in the absence of this program? Finally, we multiply that number of participants with those other numbers taken out, the total number of participants, multiply that by the value that our research has shown that a high school graduate makes over a non-high school graduate over the course of their life. Down in the second box, you can see how we might input values into this equation. So the first two numbers in red are numbers that were reported by this made-up organization. So they say that they worked with 275 high school students and told us how many of those participated in the program and then graduated. The black bolded numbers come from our research. That is what we mean when we say that we are the ones doing the heavy lifting for some of the equation numbers that you might not know. Typically, we ask organizations, as Rose stated, for information that you are most likely tracking, such as participant numbers, basic demographic information, and sometimes basic outcome data, but it is almost always accessible information for organizations. Then in this situation, we plugged in those numbers and the estimate, again, this is a simplified version of one of our metrics, but our estimate is that by working with those 275 students, we think there's a $3.3 million estimated total benefit and earnings that we can attribute to this organization. We might do this type of equation multiple times, or it might be multiple things a program does, but this is how we start to build a picture of the benefit side of our benefit cost ratio. But we're now going to hand it over to Kate Generu, our Director of Partnerships, who's going to talk a little bit about what happens after an organization becomes one of our grantee partners, because the grant decision really is just the beginning of our relationship.
In addition to unrestricted funding, Constellation Fund offers non-financial assistance, or as we call it, beyond dollar support, in the form of capacity building services through strategic partnerships. Almost like a venture capital model, once funded by Constellation, grantees are introduced to a network of resources and cadre of experts. We connect grantees to best-in-class partners to provide services, expertise, and critical capacity building support. This expert advice helps to maintain, grow, and empower vital organizations and meaningful networks. Constellation's Beyond Dollars partnership program connects our community's brightest minds to scale impact and build capacity. We see ourselves as opportunity brokers connecting nonprofits with the support they most need to achieve their goals. Constellation and our partners work alongside grantees to ensure transparency and shared learnings in a respectful manner. Partners include organizations, corporations, and individuals deeply committed to serving their community by leveraging their unique skills. Experts from across Piper Sandler, McKinsey & Company, Varday, Target, Legal Corps, as well as M&E consultants, quality health improvement experts, data analysts, and executive coaches stand ready to help you further your incredible work. Our partners provide a wide range of services tailored to the specific needs of each of our grantees. For example, the team supporting one of our grantees, the Minnesota Prison Doula Project, included 3 different entities and 7 individuals. The group has expertise in finance, strategy, operations, and legal to tackle a challenge common to nonprofits: long-term sustainability in their workforce. Goals are co-created alongside grantees in a collaborative goal-setting session. Together, we determine the appropriate support model for each grantee based on a menu of offerings, which could include strategic workshops, staffed projects, and referrals to other pro bono partners. As we continue to pilot our Beyond Dollars program, we remain open to your insights on what capacity building services are most impactful and beneficial. And now, the nitty-gritty on how to apply.
Thank you, Kate. Organizations eligible to apply for funding from the Constellation Fund are those working to alleviate poverty in the 7-county Twin Cities metropolitan area. organizations must yield demonstrable results and serve those living below 185% of the federal poverty line. We are very aware of the great need that organizations have for unrestricted funding, and we welcome applications for general operating funds, as well as program or project-specific funding applications. As you saw in the video, we are focused on 4 issue areas: health, education, employment, and housing. Your organization may fall into more than one category. For health, the Constellation Fund is seeking applications from organizations and programs that address racial health disparities across our priority drivers, which are mental health, chronic diseases, substance use disorder or chemical dependency, primary care, and maternal health.
In our education portfolio, we are prioritizing organizations that are working in early childhood education, high school graduation or equivalence completion, and higher education access and persistence.
And for employment, we're interested in the following broad priorities: work skills and career readiness training, support for women and people of color entrepreneurs, support for people facing barriers to employment. And then we'll move on to housing. And for housing, we are interested in these four broad categories: homelessness prevention, supporting housing services, cost burden households, and culturally specific housing. But we do recommend reaching out to the impact officer that leads each priority area to talk about your proposal before applying.
From start to finish, our process takes about 8 months from when you submit your first application to when the Constellation Fund makes a grant decision. There are 2 application windows per year, and you can see our website for the upcoming application deadlines. Your application must be submitted via an online form. And please note that you are not able to save your work on the online form, and you must complete the application all at once. Therefore, we suggest reviewing the application instructions that are on our website and preparing your answers ahead of time so you can copy and paste your responses into the online submission form. If you have any accessibility needs or have trouble with the online form, please do not hesitate to reach out to our team. The Constellation Fund staff reviews applications and selects some to move to the full assessment stage. During the full assessment, we will have an in-depth conversation about your organization's work and the outcomes that come from that. We will also plan a site visit, either in person or via Zoom, as part of our qualitative evaluation. Constellation will ask you to send us data from your records that we can use to calculate your organization's benefit-cost ratio. And following that, we will have at least one phone call or an in-person meeting to discuss the quantitative analysis report and benefit cost ratio calculation for your organization's work. Twice a year, in May and in November, our board of directors approves the impact officer funding recommendations and decisions, and we communicate those to your organizations shortly after the board meeting.
Thanks, Cooper. And this is just another depiction of what that timeline looks like, going through the steps that Cooper just outlined. To submit the application, we will make a call for grant applications on our, it'll be open on our website, but if you haven't joined our mailing list yet, we highly recommend that you do that so that you can get an email update of when our grant windows open. As Cooper said, those happen twice a year. We would encourage you, you can even go now and download the PDF for all the questions for our application if you wanted to get a jump start on what are those questions and if you wanted to work on them ahead of time. But when it comes time to submit, we do recommend that you have it all completed so you can submit it all at one go into the online form. And if you have any technical difficulties, contact us at impact@constellationfund.org. But if you have any further questions and want to connect with an impact officer, we are all very much here to be accessible to you and want to connect with you and your organization at any stage of your application process. So please do reach out to us. The best way to do that is to email impact@constellationfund.org. to be and tell us a little bit about what you're looking to talk about, and we will connect you with the right impact officer who would be very happy to have a conversation with you about how to position for eligibility and fit, and then also just how to position your organization for a successful application. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. To close out, we were going to just be sharing a final video so you can hear from some of our current grantees who we have the privilege of working with and supporting, and what their experience has been like with working with Constellation Fund. Thank you.